Actually, let us begin, this fantastic journey of 1 hour with you of Stories with Kiran. So my first question to you is, from a career in sales and marketing to becoming a storyteller, can you summarize your journey? So why did you become interested in storytelling? How it happened? What is your journey?
I would say I love stories and drawing and creating stuff right from beginning because my mom was someone who really believed that the children should have the ability to do these amazingly wonderful things like storytelling and sketching and drawing. So from childhood, I had this passion to do these things. But once I began to learn, or rather journey in the life of education, I found these skills are not really required. So I began to use them only in my hobbies. So I used to take part in competitions, drawing competitions, and storytelling competitions, and used to win prizes. But as days progressed and years began to move on, I realized something else was calling me. So in my undergraduation as a physics major, I was drawn to get into the field of business management. And so I took that plunge. Of course, I tried my CAT, I tried my XLRI, flunked in both of them, found myself at a loss until I got an admission in an institute called XIME, Xavier Institute of Management and Entrepreneurship in Bangalore. Today, it's quite famous, not so at that point in time in 1997. And the journey began. I learned, I loved communication, I loved people, I loved the way messaging and marketing can work to persuade people. So I believe that's where my life has to be. And I joined marketing. Now, I did not get campus placement like others, which meant that I had to find a job on my own. And that job was in sales. Now, I loved, again, the messaging, the creating. I hated the selling. I didn't like to go around selling to people, but that's what I had to do. And I dreaded that first job. I wanted a break desperately. Thankfully, I got a break and I got into marketing communication and into branding for an agency, and things were looking quite good. We had a good number of agencies to work with, and that's when the love of storytelling and visuals came back more and more. And I was excited to see that organizations were actually using these things to communicate at least with external stakeholders, and that was amazing. So I indulged in that. I did programs and I began to use visuals a lot in my communication. But at some point in time, I found myself kind of boxed in with being an employee. And I said, let me get out and become someone who can manage my own life and do things the way I wanted to do. And that was the plunge that I took into being an entrepreneur for myself. And I did quite a bit of things, as you said in the introduction, staffing, outsourcing. But finally, at some point in time, the draw of storytelling and visuals came back to me powerfully. And in 2009, I started Story Presses. And then the journey began to dive into the world of combining visual thinking, storytelling, and of course, creativity to make the world a better place and make me have a lot of fun doing the same.
Your company Story Presso is
Yeah,
into visual communication.
that's right.
So my question is, how important is visual communication for growing a business? How do you help them?
Every human being is visual in nature. Now, I'm not talking about visual intelligence or the way we um, learn something. I'm talking more about the way we perceive information. Everything around us is visual, which is one of the reason today videos and movies are so popular. Everyone likes to see. For a moment, if I ask the people in this audience to close your eyes, just close your eyes and imagine things. You're imagining things you've seen in your life. You're recalling. You're not seeing something new. We are so used to seeing things that we cannot see a world without seeing. And that's the root of visual communication. Today, every organization believes in using visuals a lot because there is power in using visuals. For example, let's say when you are small, you normally use a word or use a picture of a cat or a house to teach a child what does that really means. So a child looks at a picture of a cat or a dog or a house or anything else and says, this is a cat, this is a house. And that's how we learn. Human beings always learn visually. The same is with the brain. Our brain is a network. And in that network, we have verbals and we have visuals. That's why I call it as VV, verbal and visual. When they are connected together, you are able to enter into people's minds and hearts together. Because most of the time, our communication, if it is centered only on the mind, you really cannot persuade someone. You really cannot make anyone excited. But when you talk to the heart, along with the mind, something amazing happens. People began to believe what you're saying. They begin to have respect to what you do, and they start buying in to what you're giving them. So every organization, be it external or be it internal, when you can start using visuals along with the right stories, you find that you are reaching into people's minds and into people's hearts. Isn't that what you want?
I would like to know more about the science behind visual communication and storytelling.
See, the brain is an amazing stuff. And honestly, we're still unraveling how the brain really works. And even now, people are studying and seeing how the brain is so powerful and how the connection between the logical and the creative world is so beautiful. Now, in a work life situation, for example, just imagine this. Imagine what we are doing right now. There is no stories, there is only logical sequencing, only logical reasoning, only analysis. What really happens is our brain will get tired very soon, which is what happens in real life. People get tired from work. Has anyone ever told us we get tired from watching movies? We get tired from watching videos? We may say eye strain, we may say it is boring, but we'll never say we are tired because the brain of the creative side starts enjoying this process of feeding information inside it. The science is very simple. We are people who needs visuals. We are people who need stories. There have been enough experiments done to kind of prove the need for stories in the organizational setting. There are a few experiments that has been done. One is something called a significant objects. You can Google that on your browser anytime you want. Significant objects. They'll give you a story about a situation when a bunch of journalists and researchers actually used very simple objects, something like what you find anywhere without any value. They took these simple objects, bought for a very small price, put it on eBay, and wrote a story around it. Now, these were imaginary stories, all coming from the mind of someone. But what happened is very simple. This object was no more an object. This object became a figment of someone's imagination. And when that happened, the value of this product was not here, it went right up. In other words, people believed in the story you had to tell them. So when you start telling stories with the right visual to guide the thinking, you are able to communicate and persuade people to buy in, to believe, and to have an impact in their lives.
So actually, you love help achieve clarity and visibility in a companies or NGOs, their results and relationships. So
Yes,
how is result and relationship they are interrelated?
that's a good question, Kiran. Yeah, we all played Caesar, isn't it? When you were small, Caesar, up and down, up and down. I see results in relationship or in these both sides. One side is the relationship, one side is the relationship, and it's a balance. You can't have one without the other. So, what is happening when we start bringing in storytelling, especially into relationships? You start creating people, or rather, building people who believe in your vision, who believe in your policies, who believe in your values. And these people, because you invest in them, you start making them your heroes. They stand as ambassadors for you. In other words, they become you. And when people do that, they automatically go towards getting the best results possible. They always tell people, you want to get better results, start building deeper and meaningful relationships because you can't get otherwise. You can drive people, you can put policies in place, you can create structures, but end of the day, if you don't get people to be on your side, to walk with you, you will not get those results. You may get small time gains, but you will never have the long time success that many amazing brands have got today. Let me
Wow.
tell you a story right now, Kiran, to
Please,
add
please.
value to that. You know,
Yes.
one of my favorite storytellers is Jack Welch, who was the CEO of General Electric. Now, Jack talks about a time in his 20s when he was working in a plant. He was a nobody, just a person in the plant. And one day he was doing an experiment. And he says, after doing that experiment, the plant blew up. The plant blew up. Kaboom! It was a disaster. And the plant manager called Jack and said, "Hey, Jack, you've done a horrible job. Now the guys at Newark want to speak to you. You are responsible for what you have done. Take the flight and go and tell them what you have done." Jack Welch got on that plane thinking of termination and a bombardment also. He went there with a lot of fear in his heart, and he went into this big room in New York City in the cabin of General Electric, and he sat there, and the people looked at him, and Jack was waiting for the blow, the hammer to come. And Jack says, nothing came. They asked me questions about what went wrong and what was the learning. Imagine this. What went wrong and what was the learning? Jack's focused mind, and they sent him back to trying more experiments. And Jack says, that day, I learned something amazing. People may tell I am not an easy person to work with, but no one will ever tell that I'm a person who will beat down someone, especially when they are down. He learned that. He will never beat down someone, especially when they are down.
Innovation plays a big role in storytelling. What is your opinion about it?
Very true, because one of the key areas in storytelling is knowledge management. And I look at people, the employees of any organization, and I see in them heroes. Heroes who have journeyed a certain pathway. And in their minds, there are a whole lot of know hows. That know hows is not channelized by organizations many a time. You write down PPTs, you write down reports, but sadly, you do not take the time to generate from them or listen to them what stories and experiences they have had. When you start doing that, you start getting so much of amazing stuff. Let me tell you something about innovation, since you spark innovation in my mind. There was this toothpaste company which had a big problem, not now, many years ago. And they found that in the boxing stage, many of the boxes would not have the toothpaste tube inside. In other words, the boxes were empty and they went to the marketplace, went to the retailers, and they were getting upset about it. There was nothing inside the boxes. So they said, should we do something about this? And so these guys, they wanted to ask their own team, but the team was stretched out. And so they called consultants, paid them $8 million, and they found a great structure to actually measure the weight of the tube. So every time after the packaging, the tube will fall on that device. It will measure the weight of the tube. If the weight was less, that product will be automatically discarded. A bell will ring, and someone will come, switch off the bell, and the whole process will move on. $8 million, great solution. They just loved it. And the CEO was very happy. He was seeing less number of such products going to the marketplace. So one fine day he found, despite all these things, there were no defects coming there. And he began to wonder what could be wrong or what is different. So one day he marched down to the exact plant area and went to the area exactly where that great $8 million, you know, manufactured device was there. He found a small $20 fan, the normal fan that we use to blow air. That fan was there, and that fan was blowing away every empty box. And that's all they did. And then he asked the guys in the plant area, what is this fan doing here? What about that amazing apparatus we have created? The man said, every time the bell rang, it was so irritating. So we thought, let's put a fan, every empty box will automatically blow away. And we have a solution. But that's innovation. If that company had taken time to listen to the stories from the employees and get the know how from them, imagine you would have saved $8 million. Sometimes all we have to do is get to our people, believe they are our heroes, and listen to their stories.
In your mission statement, you claim that Your mission is to help reclaim person's story plus visual superpower. So,
Right.
can you define this power and how to build it?
Every person is born with two superpowers. One of them is the power to tell a story. Ask any child, the moment he or she starts talking, they will start telling you stories about whatever they see. They look at a small object and they will have something about this. They look at all these toys they have and they start creating their own stories. That's how fertile the story mind is. The second thing, every child can draw. What I mean by drawing, I'm talking about symbolic drawing. A round for a sun, a small triangle for a home. Somehow in their brain, they have these things inbuilt in them. But let me tell you, by the time they come to the age of 8 or 10, our education system and even sometimes our own parenting skills makes them forget this completely. They lose the superpower and it's gone. You don't get it back unless you actually start going through your process to understand what I have lost. Because in our brain, the brain, as I said earlier, it's a network. When information comes to the brain, let's say this is what I get as a new information, the brain always stores this information to existing information. It takes it, it stores it right there. If there is no visual, let's say I tell you the word, let's say I tell you the word leadership. If there is no visual for leadership, the brain struggles to understand what you mean by leadership. Many a time we just say these abstract terms: leadership, innovation, creativity. The brain does not know what it means. So it starts probing what is already there and gives it a own definition, which may be completely different from what the organization is telling people. So when we start giving the right visuals and the right story around it, the brain seamlessly takes it in. All I'm doing is building this superpower back in people. If you can start communicating using simple visuals, simple sketches, and the right stories at the right time, what you're happening, you're making people's brain much more responsive, much more easier to consume what you're giving them. And if the whole world can start bringing this back, you will find a whole brain communication. And the tiredness we talk about, the boredom we talk about, the purposeless things we talk about will start fading because people will have something exciting going on in their minds.
Wow. Can you elaborate this more, maybe by taking some case study or maybe a real time story by explaining this?
Um, okay, let's say, for example, one of the things every organization does is a whole lot of PowerPoint presentations, isn't it? Every meeting has PowerPoint presentations, and that happen like whatever, like 9, 10 times or even more that in a day. And now virtually things are much more worse. PowerPoint presentations keep on happening a lot. But instead of say a PowerPoint presentation, you actually start drawing the simple things that you're speaking about. Like I said earlier, leadership. I'm communicating something on leadership and I start sketching out what people think about it. So I draw a few people there, small stick diagrams. I explain that to people. They see what is happening. I put a small thought bubble there. This is what Kiran is thinking. And I put another speech bubble there saying, this is what Prasad is saying. This is what someone else is saying. What I'm creating is a collaborative diagram. And this is happening real time before people. And I also using stories and telling people real factual stories. These are not made up stories, not my tortoise on the turtle stories or my mythological stories. I'm talking real fact stories. And when I start sharing those things in the minds of people, the reality of what they're saying is actually being captured there. And one of the most amazing things for people is when I say something and that is respected and captured by someone else on an actual platform, my value starts growing up. I'll tell you about a case study we had some time back with a large organization. This group is placed around the world. And one of the directors wanted to work with a certain vertical group that had a clear cut role to change the way they see themselves to change the way they see themselves. And so they came to Bangalore for this program, and we had a facilitated uh, engagement with them for 2 days. And in this engagement, all it was very simple. We helped them to visualize who they are, what they are doing right currently, and what they need to be doing in the future. And then we completely bridge that gap one by one by first listening to their stories, eliciting stories from them, eliciting stories from the people they work with. In other words, we made everything completely visual. At the end of the day, in that, the conference room, we had papers everywhere with a whole lot of visuals. And what was happening, every person, we had 24 people in that group, every one of them were looking at those pictures and they were getting and discovering insights. And those insights were the birth for them to change the way they saw themselves. And that's what visuals do. And that's what stories do. Great stories are not just stories, but great stories provide a ground for you to think of a story for yourselves. They spark more and more stories.
Prasad Rajgopalan is a founder of Stories for Training. He owns a company called as Insights Productions, which is into video production, and he does a lot of corporate video and corporate films. I also work closely with him, so I have seen his work, and he's also a great script writer and storyteller. So he has created this format, and let us understand from him what is Stories for Training and how it is going to help presenters and trainers in future.
Thank you, Kiran, and thank you, Ashley. And it has been a great sharing. So, like Ashley was saying, for a presenter, you need a emotional bonding with the audience to complete the communication. And from a neuroscience point of view, it all comes down to three key hormones. So let me share a PowerPoint. The bonding between a mother and a child is considered the most powerful bonding in terms of trust. And the reason is during pregnancy and immediately after after delivery, a massive dose of oxytocin is released. And this is the reason why there is a big bonding between the mother and child. Similarly, if you take a bonding between a fan and a celebrity, there is the bonding is of excitement. And this happens because a big dose of dopamine is released between them. And the bonding between, say, a stand-up comedian and the audience, this happens because, again, the endorphin is released. So if you are a trainer or a teacher, you can, as Ashley was saying, you can, through storytelling, create a big bonding between you and the audience. In fact, there is a concept called functional storytelling. What it tells is using a particular story, telling a particular story, you can release dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphin. And using this, you can create more focus, more motivation in your audience. You can make your audience more trusting and more relaxed. So what we have done is we have tried to make storytelling more simpler. So let me share my website. So this is Stories for Training. It's a OTT channel. And what we have created is we have created a library of 90-second animated, inspiring story-based videos. So these videos are based on business parables. And we have created a series based on Bollywood dialogues. So we have made. So what we are saying is this is the fastest way you can become a storyteller. All you need to do is select a story, play a story, and you can start your conversation with your audience based on that story. So let me play one story from Bollywood se Seeko.
तेरा क्या होगा कालिया? सरदार, मैंने आपका नमक खाया है, अब गोली खा। जो डर गया समझो मर गया। जो डर गया समझो मर गया। जो डर गया समझो मर गया। जो डर गया समझो मर गया।
सरदार, जो डर गया समझो मर गया।
है?
So in a meeting, you play this video. You can create a smile in your audience and release endorphins and make them relaxed and be ready for the meeting. This is the first of its kind OTT channel which we have created, and you have been in training for long. So how helpful such a OTT channel could be for trainers, for teachers, and in presenters for general?
Thank you, Prasad. I love that video because it made me smile. And I think that's an important part of, in any training program, get people to start smiling. That starts helping people to learn. So having said that, I see three ways at a, immediate application. Number one, this can be used to illustrate key points. As a trainer, you always have key points that you want to share to people. And today in a world where multitasking is so key, and everyone's attention span has almost come down to 10 minutes or even lower, 8 minutes. We need to have things like these to startle the brain to whatever it was to come back to what they need to be. So this can be the bridge. Illustrate key points by using these simple 90-second videos. The second way that I see can really work is when you use it to spark another story. So you just show the story about examples of how this single word or the single phrase can trigger something in people's mind. Imagine the same phrase. So dar gaya to, mar gaya. Use the same phrase and let people think of a story in their own situations at work. Right. What you're doing, like I said, if you can get people to start thinking stories, that's the best way you can get people to change. That's the second way. The third way that I think it can really work is when we start getting participants to discover insights from those stories. So your shared 90-second story, what do you think about it? What is your meaning about it? Don't tell them exactly what it is, but let them think how this can really work for them. In other words, we are getting a message to them and getting the brain to start creating insights. And I always believe when people, doesn't matter what age they are, can start thinking insights for every learning they get, that's when the brain starts storing that as a needed information for me. Otherwise, the brain will just discard it.
So I would like to subscribe to Stories for Training. You need to go to www.storiesfortraining.com. Go to sign in, and it's a matter of few minutes. You can subscribe to it. We have created a special promo code for today, SFT50. If you use this, you can get a 50% off on all categories. See, today we have got 3 categories. Silver, free for 3 months. Gold is 200 rupees per month or 2000 rupees per year. And platinum is 300 per month, which includes all the videos, English and Hindi. And it is 3000 per year. And if you have any suggestions, you have any difficulty in subscribing, you can mail to me, prasad@storiesfortraining.com.in.
Do you think that the stories can help remove the constraint, what past imposes on us?
Definitely yes, Kiran, because sometimes we believe certain stories that has been created by others or by ourselves in our brain. So one of the best things is when we start creating or getting a new story, that's when our life begins to change. So one of the ways we actually give a vision story for any person, be it organization or for yourself, is give a new story for yourself. In other words, craft a completely new story for yourself and use that as your launch pad. When you start doing that, you start believing in that little by little. In other words, you're slowly moving from this zone to the new zone where you want to be in. That's so vital. Nothing else can do that. Not persuasion, not any amount of analysis. It's just stories that can really help you make that bridge between this chasm and this.
Now you tell us about, how you build stories, or what is your formula, what you can tell our viewers. If they want to build a story, what's the quickest, easiest, and effective way?
Yeah, storytelling has always been a certain kind of mystery for people, simply because it's been there in the very beginning. And I know there are amazing storytellers in the world today. And if you look at the ancient times, people always stood before the fire, and there was a storyteller. And he will look at them and say, "Once upon a time." And everyone will go simply silent, because that's how stories always began. Now, the person I really admire and I follow is someone by name Stephen Denning. Stephen Denning was used to work in World Bank, and in 1995, he began to understand the power of storytelling. He realized the World Bank had a lot of knowledge, but sadly, it's not being used to help people. And so in 1996, despite trying so many PowerPoint presentations and a whole lot of analysis, he came out with a story, a true story of something that happened in Zambia about one lady who went to the disease Center for Disease Control to find out information about how to stop malaria. And he used that story as a convincing point to let the people in World Bank realize the need to share knowledge in the form of stories. And he says, despite all the analysis, all the PowerPoint failures, this one story became a springboard story that made change happen in World Bank. And by 2000, World Bank had already become a storytelling organization. And that's the power of change. You can really change stuff. So what I learned from this is we need to move from storytelling, the art form. It is vital. It is necessary. It is important. I'm not saying no. But in the corporate setting, we need to move from the art of storytelling to the science of storytelling. So when you move something from art to science, you need to have what is known as repeatable practices. Because science is all about doing the same thing again and again and getting the same results. It works every time. It's proven. It's meticulously, how do you say, uh, structured in such a way it can really work for anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what background you come from. It doesn't matter what your learning has been. All you have to do is take these frameworks, put your story in that, use the templates, and bingo, you have a story that can really work for you. So that's what we do in StoryPresso. We get people to actually, we give them frameworks and templates. So I can share one framework with you. I call it the simplest framework available. It's called SOSO, S-O-S-O, S-O-S-O. So you can say it in your minds, SOSO, S-O-S-O. So in storytelling, especially in business storytelling, in corporate storytelling, we always remember that the foundation of a story is a fact. Is a fact. In other words, there is a truth behind that story. So when you're telling a factual story or a business story, you always start with the first yes. And the first yes is setting. Setting. When I mean setting, we talk about where and when. Where and when did this incident happen? Like I said, it's a factual story, which means at some point in time it actually happened. Like I say, Jack Welch, when he was in his 20s, talking about the who and a time frame, isn't it? Setting. And then we talk about the obstacle or the opportunity, or even an option. Or Jack, in this case, had an obstacle. The obstacle was he has blown the factory, he was about to get fired by all his understanding. That was the obstacle he had to face. He didn't know what to do. But as he walked to that place, and the people began to ask him different kind of questions, Jack began to get a solution, not just for them, but a solution for life. Because out of that incident, he created a value system for himself. Never beat down people, especially when they are down. That was a solution. The last woe is the outcome. The result of that is very simple. How will you start implementing it? So setting, obstacle or opportunity, solution, and finally it is outcome. S-O-S-O. Practice it. You will find that you can become very quickly a storyteller at work.